Good afternoon, Park Church. Good evening, good morning. Whenever you find yourself watching this, this is your Midweek Pastor's Moment. It's Wednesday, June the 29th. So glad to have you taking a few moments to just look into God's Word with me today. And last week we were in 1 Timothy, and now this week I want to read to you from 2 Timothy. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 11. Paul writes to Timothy, "Here's a trustworthy saying. If we died with him, we'll also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we disown him, he will also disown us. If we are faithless, he will remain faithful, for he cannot disown himself." So Paul's writing this second letter to the young preacher Timothy, and he gives him some truths to hold on to. Truths that are true no matter what the situation or season. Some people need to realize that truth is not seasonal, it's not generational. Truth is truth. And Paul is giving him instructions, and many of Paul's instructions to Timothy are a reminder to follow Paul's example. Follow after the way Paul has lived his life through suffering, through persecution, and God has not only rescued him, but he's also delivered him. God has proven himself time and time again in Paul's life. And so at the end of his life, he's able to say, continue in this example. And so he writes this is a trustworthy saying, Timothy. In other words, give full weight, give full consideration to these truths. And then he breaks them down very simply. He says, if we died with him, we'll also live with him. If we died with Christ, if we follow his example in death, if we die to ourselves, if we die to our will, if we will determine each and every day to take up our cross and follow him, we have a promise that we will also reign with him. We have the promise that Jesus said, I'll come back and take you to be with me, that where I am, there you may be also. But it's predicated by us being willing to lay down our lives. We have to lay down our own volition. We have to do this denying self every single day. Jesus, he denied himself in the garden. He said, Father, not my will, but yours be done. He was obedient to death, even death on a cross, Paul wrote to the church in Philippians. So if we died with him, we'll also live with him, everlasting life with him forever. If we endure, we'll also reign with him. Many times in Paul's various epistles, we see him using the imagery of a runner in a race. The runner in a race, the call to persevere, to endure to the end, to say, don't give up before the finish line. Endure, push through. And at the end of his second letter, Paul says, then there is now a crown of righteousness in store for me, and not just me, but everybody who has longed for or loved the appearing of Jesus. God will honor those who endure to his coming, right? In every season, in every situation, those that endure, those that push through, those that persevere. If we disown him, he will disown us. Well, what's disowning God? Well, how do our actions, how do our words, the way we speak, our priorities, how do those things deny the existence of God in our lives? How do they deny his lordship or sovereignty in our lives? We have to realize the implications of us denying ourselves and becoming a slave to righteousness, in doing well and in acting in godly example. How do those things, the way we act, deny that God is even in the picture, that he's not far off, but he's near to us and he speaks to us. He lords over our lives and he leads us. If we're ashamed of Jesus before man, he says that he'll be ashamed of us before his Father that is in heaven. If you deny me before men, I'm going to deny you. We shouldn't disown him. In other words, if we talk down about Jesus, he won't speak up for us. And we read Jesus talking in Matthew, the parable at the end of days when God will divide and he'll say to those on his left, away from me, you evildoers, for I knew you not. I love the words in the Song of Solomon. I am my beloved's and he is mine. There's this sense of ownership. Christ owns us. We're not going to disown him because he has ownership over our lives. So we're going to act in such a way that shows people that Christ is Lord of our lives. So we don't want to disown him. Otherwise, he will disown us. Finally, if we are faithless, he is faithful. Church, Christ is our rock. He's the rock. He never changes. He never shifts. He's steadfast. We may be like the waves. Going back a couple weeks to what Pastor Kayla talked about in her midweek moment, we may be like the waves, that time shifted or blown about. Inconsistent here on the shore and then pulled back and gone again. But even though we remain tossed, he is faithful. He remains steady and steadfast. God's many promises to us are the same because they're rooted in who he is. And many of the promises of God are sort of claused in a way that if we, then God. If we, then God. If we who are called by his name will humble ourselves and pray, seek his face, turn from our wicked ways, then God will hear us from heaven, heal our land. Even when we don't live up to our if, God's promises remain. He can't retract them. He doesn't renegotiate them. They don't become void because that would disown himself. That would negate his everlasting, steadfast nature. So they're there for us so that when we're ready to come back and give our if, he will fulfill them. And so all of these statements, these short statements here in 2 Timothy are principles and trustworthy sayings. And then verse 14, after he says this, Paul says, keep reminding God's people of these things. Saying these are trustworthy sayings. We need to hold on to these. We need to revisit them. We need to look at them in our own lives. How are we going to live with him, reign with him? How are we going to, declare who he is so we don't disown him? How are we going to remain faithful? We have to persevere in these and endure to the end because we want that crown of righteousness. We want God to say, well done, good and faithful servant. We have to review these and hold them close. God is faithful. If God is speaking to you through the ministry of the church, maybe it's through your small group that you're a part of or your prayer group or through the Sunday ministry, or even through our midweek devotional time, we'd really love to hear about it. And you can email us at thechurchinfo@theparkchurch.ca and just give us your testimony. Tell us how God is challenging your heart, maybe coming through on the promises he has for your life. You've seen some prayers answered. And we'd love to rejoice and celebrate with you in doing that because we know that God is on the move. We may not always see the tangible things in our corporate gatherings, but God is working in your lives, and we really are confident in that. So I pray that you'd be willing to share those things with us so we can rejoice with you and maybe continue to pray along with you. A couple of quick announcements. This coming week, it's the long weekend. Canada Day celebrations happening in Strathcona County on the 1st. Maybe you're taking your family out to take part in some of those. It's going to be really great. We should honor our nation as well. And so God bless you and your family as you do that. We hope to see you on Sunday because it is Ice Cream Sunday. After the service, we're going to have a time of fellowship. We have ice cream, we'll have cones and bowls, so you can stick around, enjoy a sweet treat, and just fellowship with one another. Just take that extra time on the long weekend to pause and engage in good fellowship. Maybe introduce yourself to somebody you haven't talked to before. Also, this coming Sunday, we're concluding our series on honor. It's been a great series, and we know that God is speaking to us through it, and he's going to do that again on Sunday, and so I'm excited for that. Our summer kids camps, reminder that registration is open. Don't wait till the last minute. We have just over a week before they start, and we want to fill those camps up. So if you would, share our posts on your various social media and just help to get the word out. Get the word out to your neighbors and to your friends. And Pastor Kayla has a lot of great things in store. July the 10th, Tiffany Rowley will be with us she's here in Canada from Cambodia, our global worker. She'll be sharing in the morning service. As I had said previously, come expecting to be able to give as well and contribute to that. There will also be a special follow-up missions information time with Tiffany on the evening of July the 17th. So we're inviting you to come to the church for that, hear more in-depth detail about what's happening in Cambodia, about the Child Care Plus Project 130, as well as the many other things. They have so much going on there, and we just want to honor Tiffany, give her some extra time to speak. There'll be some roundtable discussions, and that's happening on the evening of the 17th. Finally, with summer upon us, there are great opportunities again to engage our neighbors. I reminded the church on Sunday that during COVID, we weren't really able to get together. Even outdoor gatherings were restricted. Why not now really engage with the people that are around us because we have opportunity? The Dombrowskis are hosting campfire discussions for their neighbors as part of a small group community. And I would encourage you to consider doing the same or doing similar. How can you gather people around you, just do life together and have good faith discussions, faith-filled discussions. It doesn't take a lot when you just make it simply about gathering and fellowshipping with one another. And we'll help you, resource you to do that. They meet every second Friday at 7 p.m. You can find their group under the groups tab on our small group listing. And maybe you want to talk to them about how that's going. But gather with your community, gather with your neighbors, get out there, be in parks, engage with our community. We love Sherwood Park, and we want them to know the Park Church is for them. And then finally, if you could pray, it seems a long way off, but September will be here faster than you know. And I'd like you to pray about how you plan to be involved and engaged in the church this coming September. Maybe it's serving for the first time with a hospitality team or in another ministry. Maybe it's joining a small group. We really believe in small groups and how important they are to our disciple, how they help us to grow, how they help people to get to know us and us to know them, and how the body ministers to one another. And then also for those that would be leading a small group. Again, pray about it, ask for God's direction and leading, and we know that you hear from Him and He will lead you appropriately. So that's all for me tonight, Park Church. We hope to see you Sunday. Talk to you then.